Today we're taking a hands-on look at the Xvive MORE YOU, which is a compact audio interface designed for creators and musicians who want professional quality sound without getting lost in menus or complicated routing. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the setup. I'm going to show you how the hardware works and give you a full tour of the controls so you can see how easy it is to dial in clean gain, add effects, monitor your mix, and get great audio whether you're recording vocals, instruments, podcast interviews, or streaming. So on that note, let's unbox this thing and see what it could do. Okay, first things first, a big thank you to Xvive for sending me this MORE YOU interface to check out. I was actually really excited to get my hands on it because I've been looking for a better solution for my recordings and YouTube videos, and this one stood out to me as something that could genuinely improve my workflow. So let's take a look at what's inside. So first we have a USB-C cable, which is great because not every interface actually ships with the cable you need to get started. This one is a USB-C to USB-C, so you could plug it in directly to your laptop or your computer without needing an adapter. And if your computer only has USB-A ports, you could always use a USB-A to USB-C cable or an adapter if you have one, and it'll work fine. Next up, on top of the plastic insert, you'll find a card with a set of QR codes printed on it. Now, you've got one for a quick start guide, one for a full user manual, which I really highly recommend checking out, one that takes you to the product page, and then one for the warranty registration. I actually really like that they included these right on top because you don't have to dig through the box to find the instructions. You just scan it on your phone and you immediately have everything you need to get up and running. But again, I highly recommend checking out the full user manual as well. Next, it looks like it came with a few pieces of marketing material, including this small booklet for Xvive's in-ear monitors, so check that out whenever you have some extra time. These are great products as well. And then finally, we get the main event, which is the MORE YOU itself. And first impression is that it looks really clean and really well laid out. You've got all the controls on front, big knobs that feel easy to grab, reverb controls, mix controls, headphone level, and we'll go over all that in just a second. But heads up, there is a plastic protective covering over the faceplate, so be sure to peel that off before you start using it. Keeps everything from getting scratched during transit, but once you take it off, the surface looks much cleaner and easier to read. All right, now that we've got everything out of the box, let's take a quick look at the features on the MORE YOU so you know what everything does before plugging it in. So starting on the top of the device, you'll see that everything is laid out in a way that feels really intuitive. You got 4 knobs over here dedicated to reverb and mix control for channels 1 and 2, which lets you dial in how much of your voice or instrument you hear in your headphones and how much ambience you want in your monitoring. Over on the right, you've got 2 larger volume knobs. The smaller one is your headphone level, so this controls what you hear in your ears while you're recording, and the larger knob controls your monitor outputs, which is perfect if you're running speakers or sending audio to a mixer or interface. Right next to the headphone volume knob, you'll see a small button with the speaker icon on it. And this is the live mix button, and this controls what you're actually hearing through your speakers or studio monitors. So when it's red, you're in what they call studio monitor mode, which basically means you're hearing the full mix coming from your DAW. If for some reason you're not hearing anything coming out of your speakers, just double check that this button is glowing red because that's usually the fix. There's also a second mode that you could switch to that whenever you click it, it turns blue, and this lets you monitor the MORE YOU's internal headphone mix through your speakers instead. And that's more of an advanced workflow thing, and you probably won't need it right away, so for now, just remember, red means you're hearing your DAW through your monitors, and that's the setting most people will be using. Then towards the middle, you'll notice this big round button with a talk bubble on it. This is your talk button, and it lets you instantly speak to other people connected to the system without adjusting levels or stopping what you're doing. If you're recording with guests or musicians, this is a major convenience. Above all that is an OLED screen that shows you your gain levels and settings. And across the top left, you have the quick access buttons for things like direct monitoring, phantom power, and phase. These are all physical buttons, so you don't have to dig through menus or software to toggle them, which I really appreciate as someone who doesn't want to stop and troubleshoot in the middle of filming. Then over on the right side of the OLED screen, you've got 2 really important control knobs. The top one is the top encoder or the input selector, and this is what you use to choose which channel you're adjusting. Then below that is the second knob, and that's the bottom encoder or the parameter knob. And this is what actually controls the settings for whatever channel you've selected. So for example, if you've selected input 1 and you're using a dynamic mic, you could use this lower knob to set the gain level for that channel. Then switching to the front of the device, you have 2 XLR combo inputs for channels 1 and 2. These work with standard dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, and instruments, so whether you're plugging in a handheld mic, a studio mic, or a guitar, you've got a ton of flexibility. Next to that is a 1/4-inch headphone output and a 3.5mm headphone jack as well, which is great because you don't have to buy adapters if you don't want to. Then over on the right we have the power button. And one thing I like here is that everything is clearly labeled and spaced out. It doesn't feel cramped and it doesn't force you to make weird cable bends when you're setting things up. Then on the back of the device, you'll see a lot more connectivity, which is really what sets this apart from a typical 2-channel interface. On the left, you have a MORE port, which is the system that lets you link multiple units together and expand the number of inputs and outputs. This is what makes MORE YOU scalable for podcasts, bands, multi-camera video setups, and anything where you eventually want to add more channels. Next to that, you have USB-C for data and a separate USB-C port for power. This is great because it means your computer isn't responsible for powering the entire system. You can run this on a dedicated power supply and get consistent performance. Then in the middle, you'll see the ADAT input, which gives you even more expandability if you're working with additional interfaces or preamps. Then towards the right, you have your left and right line outputs for speakers or mixers, and MIDI in and out for controlling instruments or devices. It's a lot of connectivity for a compact box, and it makes the MORE YOU more of a centralized studio tool rather than just a simple audio interface. So that's a quick tour of the physical layout. There's a lot here, but it's easy to understand once you start using it. And on that note, let's connect the MORE YOU to my laptop. First, let's run through a quick overview of what we're using for this setup. I've got my MacBook Pro, the MORE YOU itself, along with the included USB-C cable, an XLR microphone, an XLR cable to connect it, and my Beyerdynamic DT770 studio headphones. This is all you really need to get up and running, and everything can be set up in just a couple of minutes. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the USB-C cable and plug it into the USB port on the back of the MORE YOU, the one that's labeled with the USB icon. So make sure you plug it into the USB data port, not the power port. The reason for this is that the MORE YOU is USB bus powered, which means it pulls power directly from the computer instead of needing a separate power supply. So connecting it to the laptop not only handles data transfer, but also powers the entire device at the same time, which keeps your setup clean and portable. Then once you plug it in, the MORE YOU will automatically power up and the screen and button lights will turn on. That lets you know everything is getting power and the device is ready to use. If you're not seeing anything here, just press and hold the power button for a second and it should turn on. Next, take your XLR cable and connect it to the microphone. And then once that's plugged in, take the other end of the cable and plug it into the input 1 on the MORE YOU. And you'll feel it click into place, and that connection provides both audio signal and phantom power if you decide to enable that later. Finally, plug in your headphones. The headphone jack is located on the front of the MORE YOU, so go ahead and connect the headphones, and then once they're plugged in, you'll be able to set your headphone volume using that big knob on the top of the unit, and again, we'll go over that in just a sec. Then as soon as you plug the MORE YOU into your computer, and for this example mine is a MacBook Pro, you'll probably get a quick pop-up asking if you want to allow this accessory to connect, so go ahead and click allow. This just gives the Mac permission to communicate with the device. And then also I'm using GarageBand as my DAW, so when it detects a new audio interface, it will immediately ask whether I want to use the MORE YOU Hub as my audio device. So I'm going to select use because this sets the MORE YOU as both the input and output for this session. Next, let's take a look at the two main controls on the right side of the OLED screen because this is where you'll spend most of your time when dialing in your audio. So the top encoder knob is essentially your channel selector, and as I rotate this knob left or right, you'll see the OLED update to show whichever channel I'm currently working on. If you're just using the MORE YOU on its own, you'll see channel 1, channel 2, and a DAW channel. The DAW channel is basically the return from your computer, so if you're monitoring playback or listening to plugins from your DAW, that signal will appear there. And if you ever expand your system with additional rack modules, you'll see those extra channels show up here as well. So the idea is simple. Just turn the top encoder knob to pick the channel that you want to adjust, and everything on the screen updates instantly to match. Now to the left of the OLED screen, there are 5 buttons that give you direct access to preamp controls for the currently selected channel. So the first one I'm pressing is direct, and when this is enabled, you're monitoring the raw input signal coming straight into the MORE YOU. If you turn direct off, you're monitoring whatever's coming back from your DAW, which is useful if you're using plugins like Amp Sims or Vocal Effects and want to hear the processed sound instead of the clean input. Next, where I press the 48 volt button, you'll see this indicator light turn on, and the MORE YOU activates phantom power for this channel. You'll only need this if you're using a condenser microphone or certain active DI boxes, and if you're using a dynamic mic, you could leave this turned off. Then when I press phase, the MORE YOU flips the polarity of the signal by 180 degrees. This can help fix phase issues when you're recording with multiple microphones, like using a close mic or room mic on vocals or an acoustic guitar, and the signals are partially canceling each other out. Then the next button there is the high pass filter, and turning this on rolls off low frequencies below roughly 100 Hertz. It's great for cleaning up low end rumbles and background noise, especially if you're recording speech or vocals for video content where you don't want a bunch of unnecessary low end clutter. Then the last button there is INST, which switches the input into instrument mode. And if you're plugging in a guitar, bass, or some other type of instrument directly into the front combo jack, this optimizes the input for that type of signal so you get the best tone and proper gain without needing an external DI box. And then back to the right side of the OLED screen, we have the bottom encoder knob, and this is your parameter control. And with a microphone plugged in, this is what you use to set your input gain for the selected channel. And as I turn this knob left or right, you'll see the gain value on the screen increase or decrease in decibels, and the meters respond in real time. It's extremely fast and intuitive. Just select your channel up top and then set your gain down here. Now, you might notice there's also an auto gain feature built into the MORE YOU. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to show it in this video, but you can access it by pressing the bottom encoder knob once, and when you do, the MORE YOU opens an audio gain menu that lets you choose whether you want automatic gain applied to just the channel you're working on or applied to all channels at once. And once you pick an option, the MORE YOU will listen to your signal, detect the loudest part of your performance, and automatically set the gain based on that. So if you'd rather skip the manual dialing in and just let the unit set levels intelligently, the auto gain can save you time and give you a really consistent starting point. Again, all of this is in the user manual, and I highly recommend checking it out whenever you have some extra time. Then as we start working our way down to the rest of the controls, the next group you'll be working with are the knobs and buttons on the lower left of the unit. And these are all focused on shaping your sound, monitoring, and navigating different modes while you're performing or recording. On the left side, you'll see 2 reverb knobs and 2 mix knobs, 1 pair for each input channel. The reverb knobs simply let you dial in how much reverb is applied to each individual channel. So if you're running 2 mics or a mic and an instrument, you could give each one its own level of reverb instead of sending them both the same amount. Then directly underneath that, we have the mix knobs, and these control how much of that channel is being blended into the overall output. So if someone is playing louder or has a hotter signal, you could dial back their mix level without affecting their gain or tone. And these are great to adjust on the fly because they instantly change what the audience or recording hears without touching preamp settings. Then to the right of those, you'll see 2 larger knobs. The first one, marked with the headphone icon, controls the headphone output volume. Turn it left or right until you hit a comfortable listening level. The second large knob, marked monitors, controls your speaker or studio monitor output. Again, this lets you set your playback volume independently without affecting your input levels. So if you're recording at night or just trying not to blast your room, you could turn your monitors down while still keeping strong gain on your microphone. Then right in the center, you'll notice the talk button, which lights up whenever you press it. And when you hit this, it temporarily dips the output of your signal so you could speak to someone off mic, instruct a performer, or communicate between takes without needing to mute channels or change your gain settings. Then over to the right of that is the live mix button, which is also illuminated whenever it's active. And when it's lit, the unit is sending out the full mix signal to your monitoring and recording outputs. If you press it, it'll toggle to a different routing mode depending on how you're set up. This makes it easy to switch between hearing your live blend or audio coming from the DAW. It's especially helpful if you're tracking vocals or instruments with effects from software because you can flip back and forth to compare your raw input to your affected output without digging into menus. So between the reverb, mix, headphone, and monitor controls, plus the talk and live mix buttons, this entire bottom section is really designed to streamline what you're hearing and how your sound is being routed in real time, without forcing you to dig into settings on the computer or inside some menu. Then before I wrap up, I want to mention again that the MORE YOU Hub actually comes with a full user guide that you could download using the QR code on the box. I highly recommend grabbing it because it's packed with really solid information, diagrams, and tips that help you get the most out of this device. There's way more in-depth info here than I could ever cover in this video, and it really walks you through all of the advanced features, routing options, and expansion workflow if you ever scale this system up. So definitely scan the QR code and keep this guide handy. It's a super useful resource. All right, so that's going to do it for this quick unboxing and first look at MORE YOU. And I've actually been testing this behind the scenes for quite a bit ever since they sent it to me, and I've actually decided to switch over to it for both my personal and professional recording setups because it just gives me more control and flexibility that I need without adding more complexity to my workflow, and it just sounds better in my opinion. So if you want to check it out or even pick one up for yourself, I've placed a link in the video description below, and if you have any questions about setup or if you want to let me know what you think about it, just leave a comment below as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. So that's going to do it for this video. If you found it helpful, I'd greatly appreciate it if you would like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Blog with Ben YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking to start a blog, check out these 2 videos on how to build, grow, and monetize a WordPress blog. They'll walk you through the entire process step by step. And as always, your support means a great deal to me and my family, and for that, I thank you. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.